But ketamine IPA
goes down like a chainsaw.
This is Tall Can Audio.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome inside a brand new edition of the Tall Can Audio podcast for your Thursday. Matt Robinson with you, as I've been saying, a long way from the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada, but not a bad little piece of scenery here as I remain hunkered down at the cottage. We visit another beautiful part of the country today to visit with our man, Scott MacArthur. Good job, Matt. Use visit twice in the same sentence. He is down on the East Coast. What's going on, Scotty Mac?
It's a beautiful part of the world today. It's like 25 Celsius and not a cloud in the sky. Yesterday, when it was 10 Celsius and misty raining sideways, a little different. Sure. But we'll take today over yesterday and hope tomorrow's the same.
This is it. It's been a little while since we chatted. I know you mentioned to our listeners last time you were on, you were headed back to school. That was why you were stepping away from the Exit Philosophy Blue Jays podcast. How did the first year go, man?
It's honestly in a series of really good decisions I've made for myself. It may be at the top of the list. I thought about it a lot over the course of the school year, just how much, Matt, I was realizing that my brain was coming back to life. And, of the many frustrations I had toward the end of my previous career, some of which I think I've clearly identified and shared with people, there were others that I couldn't quite articulate, maybe hadn't fully identified. And one that has been clear to me through the school experience and just how much I've gotten out of learning is that I was bored. And so to go back to school, to learn about new things in areas that I have long been interested in, has really been a rewarding and fascinating and inspiring experience for me. And if I may Barry Horowitz and pat myself on the back, you bet you didn't think a Barry Horowitz reference was going to make it into the Tall Can Audio podcast, but happy 10th birthday. I'm proud of myself for A, moving out here, and B, kind of going against the grain and going back to school in middle age. It's brought me back to life.
Well, that's awesome news, man. Like, you can even tell just in your voice when you talk about it. Like, there's a joy or just a happiness to talk about it, which is awesome to hear. Because, in some of the later times that you were on the show and, you could tell when you talk about that previous career, there was no joy in your voice when you were describing the later days of that. So it's amazing to hear this has gone so well for you.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, Matt, you steer the conversation. I can get existential and philosophical with the best of them, or as some may say, the worst of them. And I'm happy to go down that road a little bit if it interests you and you think it'll interest the listeners. But I'm really finally sort of, and it's a reminder. I obviously have a lot of really young classmates.
Sure.
It's been a cool experience for me to get to know people who are in their early 20s, because the world they've come up in is a world I've experienced as a young adult moving into middle age. So obviously there's a generational difference there. Mm-hmm. But to get to know them, they keep me young. They teach me things. And so it's just really kind of been cool to be in that environment and kind of be engaged and while I wouldn't say I've made friendships like the ones I have with people who are my peers in terms of my age bracket, obviously when you spend hours upon hours a day, 5 days a week for 8 months of the year with the very same 29 other people in your class, you get to know people.
Sure.
And it's been it's been a really good experience for me that way. And I've made a series of good decisions for myself after spending about 2.5 decades trying to convince myself that I belong somewhere that deep in my soul and my heart I knew I didn't.
Well, I do want to stay on that for a second. Before we get too deep into this, though, I should shout out, I'm going to have a pint here, Scotty. That's sort of what I do here. You know that. So from the Refined Fool Brewing Company down in Sarnia. Maybe that's the path you're working on right now as you go back to school.
My God, they named a brewery after me?
A Refined
Holy
Fool.
Shit, Matt, look at you finding the beer that speaks to my existence.
Well, we'll see if you agree that the second part, the actual name of the beer, speaks to you or not. This is called the Big Sexy IPA. I'm sure you'd happily wear the title if someone handed it to you. It's
well, sure, but I mean, I'd probably have to have a cage match with Kevin Nash for the right to the title, and I don't know if he's 65 years old now. I still think he could probably kick my ass.
It's possible, yeah. This is, as you mentioned, now Barry Horowitz and now a Kevin Nash reference. And then on our Monday show, you probably know Kevin Mickey from Sportsnet. He co-hosted with me, and he's a big wrestling nerd, too. So there was a couple of wrestling jokes thrown around there, too. There's some people listening right now groaning, but the hell with you. Watch 90s wrestling. It's not too late. It's available on Netflix now. Go find it. Watch Nitro from 98.
I'll tell you what. The fact that it's on Netflix means it's easily accessible to me, and I've started to watch a whole lot more of it now because of that, and especially the fact that you can get the, as they call them now, the PLEs, the premium live events. We used to call them the pay-per-views. You don't feel like you're missing out on anything because it's just all there.
Sure.
So,
it's been pretty cool. All the shows, you can old stuff, new stuff, whatever you want. So this is a 6.8% Big Sexy IPA, West Coast, from the Refined Fool Brewing Company down in Sarnia. I'm curious about what you were talking about there, Scotty, when it comes to this idea of now going to work, going to school every day with a lot of people from a different generation, and it does sort of open the door to expanding, the education is obviously expanding your mind on a lot of things, but, we sort of get set in our ways and locked into our own perspectives, whether it be politically, whether it be, whatever, we look at, but you come at it from your own spin, and the older you get, the more hardened you get in your views. And now you are going, as you said, to school every day with people who have grown up in a completely different world, and maybe no more easy dividing point than a post 9/11 world, right? Where everything they've experienced, our more angry world, our more aggressive world, our more reactionary world, our more divided world, all sort of, not all of it, but can be drawn back to that point. I'm just sort of curious if you could expand a little bit on, what it's been like to, maybe offer something up in a group project or in a group conversation and have somebody come back and say, that makes sense, but here's the way I see it from it. It just feels like it would be a really unique opportunity to widen your perspective.
Yeah. The dynamic is interesting. So like I learned from them, and it could be something as perhaps obvious as talking about a social media algorithm, and they are just so much more ahead on current day attention spans. And this is what it takes to catch a bunch of eyeballs and ears in an 8 to 10 second clip. And this is what you need to do. So like a lot of that stuff, cause we straddle the line, Matt. I'm a bit older than you, but
sure.
Like I remember being a little boy with a rotary phone or two in my house. And then obviously the internet comes along, and my high school gets the internet when I'm in grade 10, and we all can think of the dial-up noise from the turn of the century. Like we've kind of seen it all, right? Whereas my classmates, most of them, I have a bunch of classmates who are in their 30s. So I do have a somewhat, a little group of people who are somewhat in my age range. Not quite, because I'm mid 40s, but closer. People who, if I make a Seinfeld reference, will get it, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting because, like, I remember, Matt, I had a conversation with one of my classmates. I think she's 18, and I brought up Chris Farley.
Oh yeah.
And she looked at me like I was an alien. Now, Chris Farley died on December the 18th, 1997. My classmate is 18,
right,
going on 19. So she was born in 2006. So what would she know about Chris Farley? She came along about a decade after he passed.
right.
But see, I remember because my senior year of high school winter formal was the evening of the day he died, and we raised a toast. That's what he meant.
Yeah.
To us as teenagers with the, Tommy Boy and the other movies that he made and his famous SNL characters, Matt Foley and all of that. So it's interesting having those sort of generational conversations. It's also, going back to school, a very different experience now because, and where I go, Nova Scotia Community College, which is like 13 campuses across the province. So it's not quite like a Seneca, Centennial, Algonquin, like different names and whatever. This is kind of a province-wide college with more than a dozen campuses. But the one I go to has terrific supports for people and respects and understands that people learn in different ways. And so that, the exams or the tests that we used to fret over because they were so much a percentage of our final grade, we do get quizzed, we do get tested in some of the courses I'm in, but that we don't write any final exams. And our psychology professor, who is our main faculty in the social services program I'm in, he's like 3 years older than me. So it's interesting because I'm peers with my teachers in age, and I'm peers with my classmates in terms of being student.
Right.
And he and I were talking, and he said, look, man, there are a lot of scientific studies out there that show that people get over anxious on the day of major tests or exams, and their brain in that sort of anxious state gaps out, and they don't remember a lot of what they actually know.
Right.
So these exams are not accurate in terms of reflecting what somebody actually knows. And so there's different ways to learn. So it's just the college has been really good about that. It's kind of opened my eyes. I would say that this generation, the younger generation, is, and a lot of people call this stuff, it could be a little woke, or it might be a little soft, and I'm using air quotes or whatever the case may be, but people are up in their feelings. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but also sometimes fairly or unfairly, the world's kind of crappy. And when you get into the workforce, you are going to encounter situations that don't feel good. You're going to encounter dishonest people. You're going to encounter incompetent people. You're also going to encounter good people and competent people, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just about managing and sort of having those conversations when it's appropriate. And typically I let them approach me. And I was very pleased that some did, just on a variety of different topics at times, just to talk about, here's something to consider, or here's another way of looking at it, or here's a way of thinking about it, or this is what you might be able to expect in a certain work environment in the future. And
yeah, you've been out in that workforce. You've been through a lot of things, right? And
yeah, so, and so my attitude was, Matt, because I had no idea what to expect, was that, I am going to be aware of my age. I'm going to be aware of my presence because I can come across as stoic and what have you, especially if I don't know somebody very well yet. but that I will be approachable, that I will be kind, that I will be friendly, but I will let any of my classmates come to me as opposed to me trying to go to them.
Right.
Because they need to be comfortable with the old fart, right? and so that just sort of happened. And, I went axe throwing on Saturday evening in downtown Halifax because one of my classmates turned 22 and, 4 or 5 of her classmates were people she wanted there. And I was one of them. And I didn't really say this to her, but I was like, I'm kind of honored by this. Like,
sure.
You feel you want me around.
Yeah.
Like,
you're not humoring me as in we're all just classmates. You've welcomed me into your personal life here at a birthday party.
I could be your father, like age-wise.
Right.
Right. So, it doesn't mean that, we're best friends or anything, but just means so the ability to relate and in any way that I've helped them, they've helped me twice as much. And I've told a few of them that it's just been really interesting to get to know them and understand as best I can how they see the world, how they've experienced the world. A couple of them have sort of been really interested to listen to stories about what it was like before screens because they were raised with phones in their hand.
Yes.
Stuff
I know you're
like
the same
that.
way as me, Scotty. Like, you've got nieces and nephews who are, quite young, who I'm sure, you hear terms like screen time and, you can use it, but not this much time. And there's internet, I got a nephew who I'm happy to see he's kind of broken it a little bit. He's out playing soccer and road hockey and stuff with his friends more, but there was a time where like that kid was miserable without a screen in his hand and it looked like an addiction. Like he was, kids today, I hate using that phrase.
Because we're now that age. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they are absolutely growing up in a very different world than you and I did. When I came home from school at 3:30, my parents weren't home yet. Now, this is obviously a little bit older, but we were instructed to go around to the back of the house, let ourselves in, could have a snack, watch TV for about a half hour till somebody got home. And then it was outside to play or, go with other kids in the neighborhood or do whatever. You couldn't just sit around and watch TV all day. But, it's a different world now. And everybody's got a tablet. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got something, even at a very young age. And
they crave connection.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we tell ourselves we're connecting through these screens. But, I use the phone as I mean the old school phone as the example. And I think I can't remember which comedian it was. It might even have been Louis C.K. if I am still able to say his name. but somebody had a stand-up bit about how when we were young and the phone would ring, if you have siblings or whatever, like it was almost like if there were 3 or 4 landline phones in the house, everybody raced to a different phone to see who could answer it first.
Yes.
And now we're all so exhausted by the endless amount of information that we get through the little devices we carry everywhere, the news and the endless texting and all the other social media, the photos we post and da-da-da-da-da. We're just endlessly exhausted by all of this that when the phone rings, I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to talk
This
anymore.
is probably a friend or a family member legitimately reaching out, wanting to speak to you, and you groan because you're like, "Oh, enough already for today."
God.
Right?
How long is this going to be?
Right. So,
is this
it really is
10 minutes or a half hour?
Yeah. No, this is. I'm not sure it's a great direction we're headed, but it is a subject worth understanding and exploring, and at least being aware of. Because the same thing is the case that, like, my niece. Without her having a tablet of her own, I live 4 hours away. I don't get to talk to her as much as I would otherwise, right? Like if I can't send her a text, so it has its good and its bad, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, back in Facebook, of course, isn't the social media platform of choice for younger people today. But I mean, we were there when it launched, and I went to high school with people, who live all over the continent now. And I remember connecting with an old football teammate of mine and somebody I'd known since middle school. And he and his wife, or the girlfriend at the time, 15 years ago, but, they live in Southern California outside Los Angeles. And I went and stayed with them in the summer of 2010 when I went and visited some family in LA, and then went out to Orange County and got myself through what was then the Team 1200, a media pass to the 2010 Major League Baseball All-Star game in Anaheim. I stayed with Sean and his then girlfriend, now wife. And that just doesn't happen if there's no social media, right? Because I wouldn't have known Sean's cell number at that point. We hadn't been in touch for more than a decade by then. And, so it's just, there are uses for it.
Sure.
It can be a little much.
It certainly can. Speaking of a little much, Scotty, there's a name I want to drop on you here. And
oh, God.
And this is actually something I promised I wasn't going to do. You said you didn't want to talk too much about current sports. You're just not following that closely. But I do know you're still an NFL guy. Before we get into one of the other,
I am. Yes.
One of the things that I've been looking for somebody to hit with this, and I want to ask you. Speaking of a bit much, is the name Aaron Rodgers, and he has settled now. We had heard all winter this was going to be a thing. He is now going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is, well, a bit much. He is a handful. He comes with an awful lot, and look, he's sort of ran rampant over the New York Jets because, well, they're the New York Jets, and that's sort of the type of thing that they allow to happen to them. I'm curious, with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, but settling into a franchise like the Steelers, owned for a long time by the Rooney family, this picture of stability behind whatever it's been, only 3 or 4 coaches in their whole last however many years. It's Mike Tomlin's show. Is there any chance that this works, or is Aaron Rodgers about to toe down the Pittsburgh Steelers like he just did to the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to run the football, and they kind of swapped big name receivers. George Pickens is out, traded to Dallas. A move that was made after they acquired DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he has a big name target to throw to. I just my thing with him is look, is he all in on this?
Right.
And I don't ask that question because he signed the other day and it's June. I guess we're led to understand that he got married. So good for him, and God bless her. But
Godspeed.
And he is an expert on everything. So I am waiting for him to offer his keen, unbiased and not at all filtered insight into Elon Musk's claim that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, because as we know, Mr. Rogers was very sure that Jimmy Kimmel was in the Epstein files.
Right, yes.
And obviously Mr. Rogers knows all and isn't at all fucked up by the family that raised him and everything else. But to get back to the Steelers, I find Aaron Rodgers remarkably uninteresting. I don't care what he thinks about things because he's proven repeatedly to be an idiot. And quite frankly, he's a quarterback who is, I'll give him this, one of the best to ever play the position.
Sure.
But at 41, 42 years old, having torn an Achilles less than 2 years ago, part of his magic in his heyday was the fact that he could go off schedule, as they say in football, scramble around a little bit and make these remarkably strong-armed and accurate throws off balance. Well, he really now is just a pocket passer because at his age, he can't, and with the Achilles and the accumulation of injuries, can't move as well. So, you play in a division with the Baltimore Ravens. You play in a division with the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a lot of issues on the defensive side of the ball, but are a very strong offensive team. Mm-hmm. And the Cleveland Browns will have a pass rush if they don't have anything else. So, I think it's going to be a tough division. I think the Steelers probably fall anywhere from 7 to 10 wins and probably lose in the first round of the playoffs like they have every year since Roethlisberger retired.
Yeah, the part of it that I guess that's interesting to me, like, I don't know what he's got left in the tank at 41, 42. Yeah, you expect that he will be falling off a little bit. And, the off-field antics, the weekly appearances on McAfee where he airs out all his views on the world. He's got a coach killed in the Jets organization. We had to go out and get his guys. I wonder if the Steelers, under the Rooney family, under Tomlin, are strong enough to clamp down on some of that nonsense and allow us to just focus on Aaron Rodgers, or if he is going to be still able to bring his unique brand of bullshit into Steeler country. That's going to be interesting for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything or read anything on the McAfee situation with him. I do know he's paid well to go on weekly, and so if that's the case, what's the arrangement with the Steelers? Do they allow that? Or not? Was it a condition of his to continue to do that because it's miscellaneous income on the side? I don't know. My issue with that, and I understand that this isn't where we want to take the conversation, but I'll say it briefly, and it's whether it's McAfee, who is a highly successful guy.
Sure,
that's inarguable. And is very good at what he does, and I quite enjoy him in WWE as well. Or whether it's with Joe Rogan, who, obviously, Matt, when I need my Canadian political news, I'm going to a UFC. I'm going to a UFC commentator who's American and who used to host Fear Factor. That's where I get
the
my
shitty thing
Canadian
about Rogan, to be honest with you, Scotty, is he's so good at what he does for the UFC. If I could just block out everything else and not know about the podcast, and not know about the rest of it. But it sucks to tune into UFC now and go, you're so good at this. Why do you have to be so annoying on everything else? But
Matt, whether it's McAfee with Rodgers or Rogan with that dipshit Jordan Peterson or whoever else, it's that these guys either don't know, and why would Joe Rogan know anything about Canadian politics? I mean, the fact that any American is interested in Canadian politics is a new thing.
Yes.
Right? So they have no idea what they're talking about. But these people platform lunatics and don't have the capacity. Now, whether they have the willingness or not isn't relevant in the sense that if they do have the willingness, they don't have the capacity. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of rendered irrelevant. They don't have the capacity, as I'll say it, to challenge these people and to hold them to account on facts.
Right.
Like I can walk up there and I could come on your podcast here and start urinating all over my feet talking about the World Economic Forum, and you could go, yes, Scott, that sounds good, Scott. Where are we? Right?
I'm not educated enough on that topic to push back on you, and so now this becomes just a swamp of nonsense. And
then it's out there, and then some YouTube page called like "Elites Are Out to Get Us" pops into somebody's algorithm, and they click on it, and it's me telling you about all these World Economic Forum conspiracy theories, and the algorithm, because you clicked on it, then leads you down the subsequent road where Hillary Clinton is running a pedophile ring out of a pizza shop in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden you believe all this gobbledygook bullshit. Yep. It's so my issue is like, okay, free speech. Okay, free speech, good, but where's the account?
Yes.
Where's the accountability? not that you should be silenced, but you should be challenged, and you should be able with facts to back up what you are saying. And that is simply not the case. And I would love to know the story, because ESPN is owned by Disney, and ABC, the network, is owned by Disney. I would love to know the backstory of how Disney handled the Jimmy Kimmel, Aaron Rodgers situation, because Jimmy Kimmel should have taken that son of a bitch to the cleaners, but he didn't. So how did that get smoothed over? I'd be fascinated to know.
Some very high up, I would imagine, corporate shenaniganery going on to get that silenced and to make it go away. So, we'll see whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be able to hold Aaron Rodgers to account and just play football, man. We don't need the rest
Browns,
of your...
Go Bengals, go Ravens.
One of the things I've been watching creep in here, and it's not even been much of a creep, Scotty, is this idea of everything in the Canadian sports landscape, and certainly mostly in Toronto, but not just in Toronto, ending up under just one or two banners. And there's a meme now these days that is like, Canada is 5 corporations in a trench coat walking around, between your Scotiabanks and your Rogers and your whatever else. But we are now seeing Rogers has gotten approval from the CFL and the NBA and the NHL and MLS to fully engulf the rest of MLSE. They already have singular ownership over the Toronto Blue Jays. So all of this is going to end up under one banner. And that banner already also owns the networks that cover it. There's a lot of things that kind of bug me going into it. Some of it is just optics. It looks bad when a Rogers employed sports broadcaster has to cover a Rogers owned team. I don't know how much that actually gets clamped on to those reporters, but you're certainly aware of the company who is signing your checks. So even if it goes unspoken, look, there's a few places I could go here. This is a wide-ranging thing, and I'm just sort of interested to get your take in general. But let's start with the Blue Jays and Mark Shapiro. And I want to, for the moment, keep things off the field, because we just watched Shanahan get canned by the Leafs. I don't think that's unreasonable. He's been here a very long time. They have sort of hit their ceiling and not gotten past it. Masai Ujiri was a fight to get brought back, and that's a guy who won an NBA title. And by all accounts, it was Edward Rogers who was the guy saying, we don't need to pay this guy what he's worth. I want to take that over to the Jays and Mark Shapiro, whose contract is up at the end of this season. Off the field, we hear about the renovations to the Dome, the reconstruction or the new player development complex down in Florida. Off the field, would you call Mark Shapiro's time working for the Blue Jays a success? And maybe slightly differently worded, would Rogers see his time as a success worth keeping him on for?
I guess since his tenure is not over yet, there are chapters still to be written, and all you need to do is wake up today and go to MLB.com and look at the standings and see that they're currently a playoff team. So there could be positive chapters on the field still to be written here. Mm-hmm. I've said to you before, and I've said elsewhere, that I think Mark Shapiro is a very bright man. But did it take Mark Shapiro to convince the board of Rogers Communications?
This is my question. Is he uniquely qualified to get them to spend all that money, or were they going to be ready to spend all that money?
It's his name. Mm-hmm. It's his era. So, but is it 50-50 credit him, Rogers? Is it 100? Again, it can't be 100-0 because it's Rogers' money, but is it 70 to Shapiro for speaking the language and making them understand the importance of this, and 30 to Rogers for putting the money up? That's hard for us to assess. But, I mean, I guess we can talk about Shapiro. We can talk about whoever happens to be doing whatever with the Maple Leafs these days. And I'll start by asking you a question. Matt, do you have a popsicle stick?
Not on me right now. Perhaps, my niece and nephew are here often enough, and my mom takes good care of them. So there's probably popsicles downstairs, sitting right here in front of me, not now.
What theoretically you could do with the next popsicle stick you procure, whether it's from a popsicle you eat or someone else, is tape it vertically to a chair and then go and find a 50-something-year-old white man who speaks the good corporate talk and can really impress you with his ability to answer questions thrown at him by media members, and have him sit on that chair with the popsicle stick. And then when you get tired of him 2 years from now, remove the puppet and throw the next guy on there.
Right.
Because I think of the Maple Leafs, right? Mm-hmm. Kyle Dubas told us all about
we can and we will.
We can and we will. And then there started to be doubts about the desire of the so-called core four, and did they hate losing enough? And and then Brendan Shanahan, something needs to change. We need to get tougher. And now Keith Pelly, who, as you know, worked high up at both major sports television networks in this country, told us a year ago that Brendan Shanahan is a champion. Now, the obvious follow-up question that didn't get asked would be, Brendan Shanahan's a multiple-time Stanley Cup champion as a player.
Yep.
Could you indicate to me what that means as it relates to running a hockey team and wearing a suit and being in management? And then a year after calling Brendan Shanahan a champion, it was time for him to go. And now we're hearing that there needs to be DNA changes from Brad Treliving, which is pretty much a new way and fancier way.
Yes.
And I guess air quotes more impressive way of saying, well, we need to get tougher when it matters most, or we need to hate to lose
phrasing,
more, whatever the case.
Just a new headline, right?
And so, when I sit back and I'm amused and bemused and a variety of mused when I watch all this, because I'm out of it now.
Sure.
And it's just all bullshit. It's just all bullshit. It's sit a guy on popsicle stick and he's going to give you his variation of the very same sentence that the previous guy uttered and the guy before that. And let's go all the way back to goddamn truculence.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
pugnacity
it's
and
just,
truculence, and
it's just with the very same underlying message. We're not just we're here to win. We're not here to just sell jerseys and blah 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 blah. Well, okay, but I'll tell you what, Matt. I didn't watch a moment of NHL hockey all year, and then not because I was emotionally invested, but just because I was interested. I'm watching Game 7. Leafs.
Got to see the car crash. Yeah.
No, I want to know if no. I didn't assume that. I want to know if they're different.
What'd you learn?
So I've got totally fresh eyes. Like I have no right to celebrate if they win, and I have no right to be sad or mad if they lose.
Sure.
I'm watching, and I'm seeing these 2.5 line stretch passes to forwards whose asses are facing the opposition goaltender just outside the opposition blue line, no momentum. And I'm like, I've watched this every year, that and nothing's changed. They keep changing the head coach. They've changed the general manager more than once. A few days later, they changed the president and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, nothing ever changes, but The fan base is passionate. The fan base is locked in. The fan base is going to be there. This is a fan base that survived from a Maple Leafs perspective, the ownership of Harold Ballard, right?
Yeah.
You start winning again post-Ballard. Doug Gilmour comes in. Things are great. That's yours and my youthful heyday. Those teams, it's like we're back locked in on the Leafs again. So Jays, Shapiro successful. I mean, okay. Are they giving like free walking tours of the player development complex?
Well, this is it, right? I'm having a hard time seeing.
Is it luring free agents?
Well,
any more so or less so than before? I mean, if you sign with the Jays, you've got premium facilities. You have that. But is it like the difference between whether you do or you don't? It was clear they got used by Ohtani. I'm not saying he had no interest in coming to Toronto, but the Jays were never the first choice. Kudos to them for being serious about it. Mm-hmm. Roki Sasaki, they put a lot of work into that, but same thing. I don't know. I don't think Anthony Santander is looking at it and going, man, that's one hell of an exercise bike.
Nice gym
there.
Yeah.
And, but it's great. It's good. You want to have good amenities. You want to be at the forefront of sports science in 2025. I don't deny that. But, okay. There's just been a lot of toxicity and unhappiness around that team. Maybe things are a little different now. I have not been that plugged in this year. They're winning baseball games.
Well, this is one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you directly was because you're not going to be so tied into the fact that, hey, they've won a bunch in a row and they've lost this and that. I'm sort of curious from a zoomed-out perspective on is Rodgers, in your opinion, a good owner? Now that we're going to have all of the MLSE teams, the Raptors, the Argos, although I don't know how long the Argos will be for a Rodgers-owned MLSE, but the Leafs, the Raptors, the Marlies, TFC, and the Jays were already under that umbrella. They've shown they're willing to spend. Whether they're spending it smartly is a totally different question, and that has to do with the management they bring in. But they are willing to spend. Is this, in your opinion, good or bad, or do we not yet know what this is going to mean for Toronto sports to all be under this one corporate umbrella?
Well, I don't think it's ever a good thing when a massive multi-billion-dollar entity owns everything. I whether that's sports, which is, I guess, considered the toy box or the sandbox, and a little less consequential than some of the other areas of life. Although, given the enjoyment that sports brings to people, it does matter.
Right?
It does matter very much, and there are billions of dollars at stake. So
it's
the
good
matter.
PR. While they're dinging you hard for what they're charging you for internet and cable every month, they're also tied to that thing you love, right? They're the Jays, and if the Jays are good, you feel good about Rodgers right now. And
I mean, I can tell you this. I know a lot of people who do or have worked for that company, and I'm obviously quite familiar with myself because I'm on that list.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who are excellent at their jobs and who love their jobs, and they will tell you that they love what they do. I've never met one who's ever told me that they're proud to work for that company. So I'm not saying that they're not
doesn't mean
proud.
they don't exist, but nobody's ever said that to you. Yeah.
Nobody's ever said it to me. Yeah. They love what they do. In most cases.
Yep.
But nobody's ever said, geez, I'm just so proud. And I think when you look at it, it's okay. So they make themselves the big machine, and that's going to get you to buy the app that in the year of our Lord 2025 is only getting more expensive and still buffers far too often.
Yes.
And you're maybe not noticing the fact that, yes, they have a lot of live event coverage, which is important. The National Hockey League, a lot of regional Toronto Maple Leafs broadcasts, the Toronto Blue Jays on a night in, night out basis, except for when Apple comes in and wrecks our evenings. But you're not noticing that everything else is misplays of the month, plays of the month, misplays, plays that were missed of the month.
You're off the records, your Tim and Sid's, your daytime programming, it's gone. There's nothing.
Right. So I'm paying more for less, and your app still buffers. But we'll put up with that because, okay, well, this is unless I'm pirating it, this is where I go to watch it. Or I still have a cable TV package if I'm not on a Fire Stick and using the app or whatever the case may be. So I mean, that's the thing, right, Matt, is that in most cases, and we know that there have been relocations and the odd franchise has folded in sports. I get that. But in almost all of the cases, it's really unkillable, no matter how hard the incompetent owner, and I'm not saying that this is an example for Rodgers, but it's almost unkillable no matter how hard the incompetent owner is trying to kill it.
Right.
Like John Fisher with the Don't Call Them Oakland Athletics.
Yes.
They're still around in Sacramento.
Yep.
In a AAA ballpark with Vegas either happening or not.
And he's about to get rewarded by the sounds of it, though, with a beautiful new park in Vegas, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Unless he fucks that up like he did the 4 potential deals he had in the East Bay.
Right.
In the Oakland area, which is entirely possible.
Sure it is.
And that's a guy who was born into money. His father, I believe, is the founder or was the founder of the Gap.
Oh, okay.
And so there's
another
the
reason
trust
to hate
fund,
that
baby.
family. Yeah.
There's the trust fund baby doing his thing. And I it really, from an entertainment perspective, it's all about winning, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, people aren't going to care about the bullshit in the background and why. And then there's always these weird complaints about the media, like the media should be harder on this team. And then when somebody actually criticizes them, there's this band of people who are like, the media, the fans.
Players don't want to play here because the media's too hard on them.
Players don't want to play here because it's too hard, and you stupid fans getting upset. Like if you just were as smart as me about baseball, then you'd know that you're stupid for the opinion you hold, and you're just being reactionary. Like it's just this dumbass cyclical ecosystem, and everybody puts a stake in the ground somewhere in or on that circle, and around we go.
It's interesting for me because you and I have both spent time covering sports in the nation's capital. And you were gone by the time it got really bad under Eugene. But at the time, Melnyk was a savior in Ottawa. He had bought,
I was, okay, it hadn't gotten bad, but we all knew he was insane.
There you go. So
I remember there was a Saturday morning, the annual skate over the holiday season. The Leafs were in town for a Saturday night game, and I remember there was a press conference at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we all went in, and he introduced some of the people, and I turned to the person, I can't remember who it was, but turned to the person sitting beside me. I said, "This guy's sloshed." At 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, not ideal.
And I'm not, the very sad,
of course,
what happened to him, but everybody knew there was a problem there.
Sure.
Pretty early on, but again, you're in business with the team when you're on the radio broadcasts, or
their fortunes are your fortunes, and right. TSN 1200's coverage and their year looks a lot different if the team makes the playoffs than when it doesn't. And so the reason I bring them up is they have now this new owner, Michael Andlauer, and his first year and a half, I guess it's been. Has been a bit of a honeymoon period. And I don't say that in a way that suggests I think it's going to go bad soon. But so far, he's the new guy. We like him better than we like the old guy. And he has made some smart moves, some smart hires. And so far, things are going reasonably well. Can you see a scenario with Rodgers becoming sole owner of MLSE? Because by all accounts, within the next year or two, they will also push out Larry Tannenbaum, where right now we're all happy, relatively speaking, based on Rodgers' willingness to spend. The Leafs spend. The Raptors are struggling right now. It doesn't appear to be because they're not willing to spend. The Jays have spent. Can you envision a scenario where that eventually isn't good business for Rodgers, and all of a sudden, it's different than a single guy, right? A Eugene Melnick who you're tied to his finances. We can talk about whether Rodgers is going to spend smartly, but do you envision a scenario, or can you envision a scenario where, Rodgers is going through some belt tightening time and the sports teams, they have their budgets cut back on, or will that not likely be a situation these teams run into under a big corporate owner like that?
Well, I think, so the National Hockey League has a salary cap that is, as hard a cap as any of the major four have. And I guess it'll be up to $105 million in 3 years, 2 or 3 years, something like this, going up rather significantly year over year and coming up over the next 2-3 years. That is still not a lot of money relative to
the Leafs
Major League
earnings.
Baseball. Now,
oh sure,
I think than Leafs earnings, and I think the Maple Leafs, will always spend close to or near to the cap. I think the renovations of Rogers Center mean that the Blue Jays are swimming with the big fish. And
when you spend what they did on Vlad, you're pot committed, right? Like,
you're pot committed. And I will also give them credit. I mean, their revenues come in Canadian dollars, and their payroll expenses go out in American dollars, and that is prohibitive in this day and age. So for that they get credit, but I do think that I see no reason why at this point they would ever draw down on that. And then in basketball, you've got an interesting situation in which it's very much a star-driven league, but teams who draft and develop superstars are in the driver's seat to retain those superstars on the so-called max contracts. And those max contracts are out of this world expensive, but that's tied to the fact that the NBA, just cleaned up on its latest set of media rights deals.
Yes.
And that gets spread around the league. And you have rosters of 12. So you're not, you don't have 18 skaters and 2 goalies, and a 23-man roster.
Linebackers, and
you don't have, you don't have 26. You don't have 26-man rosters in baseball. 28 in September. Blah blah blah. So all the sports are very different. I do think that they are in it to be competitive, but I do think that we are somewhat naive as fans if we simply say that the indication of good ownership or bad ownership is a strict binary between willingness to spend or unwillingness to spend.
Right.
And you touched on it a little bit earlier. So who's spending the money? Who's making the decisions? Like, it's very clear the Pittsburgh Pirates are a nuclear disaster.
Yes.
And it is tied to their owners' frugality and incompetence. So for, the willingness to spend or lack of willingness to spend can certainly be a contributor.
Well, you think back just to those few years before the NHL brought in their hard cap. The Rangers and the Leafs spent like drunken sailors, didn't accomplish shit. The Red Wings and the Avs spent a lot of money, and they were successful. So it's who's got the wheel, right? And who's controlling those purse strings.
Exactly. So the Blue Jays, I mean, they snuck under the luxury tax threshold with the trade deadline moves they made at the end of July last year, which was in retrospect, and at the time, I think we saw this too. I don't know if we need to speak in hindsight or in retrospect to say it was the right idea because they weren't going anywhere. So you may as well reset that clock. But like a team with that payroll should not have been that shitty.
Well, even this year, when you look at it, right, like they are spending more money than they have ever spent, and all the odds makers were said this is a life and death team to make the playoffs, right? When you are spending like that, you should be a favorite, like the Dodgers or like the Yankees, and yet you're doing it just to hopefully get to 86 wins. That means, they've spent, but they haven't spent wisely, right? Like it's
well, and it's possible, Matt. It's possible that this is a sort of a bounce back year for them in unexpected ways when you consider some of the contributors that they have had. Whether it's a Heineman or a Clement, Alejandro Kirk swinging the bat well again, and then the flip side of the coin is I think we all understand, given the state of the starting pitching, that they are a Barrios, Gosman, or Bassett injury away from looking around and going, we got 40% of a starting rotation, given the fact that Bowden Francis looks not good, and you, me, and Easton Lucas are throwing every fifth day. And my shoulder hurts right now. So, but again, you can address that in July if they're still well above 500 and either in or sniffing a playoff spot.
Yeah, you can go find a 4-starter.
It's just, I do think, I would imagine, success on the field, on the ice, on the court drives eyeballs to your whatever's left of cable, but to your app, to your YouTube page, to the podcasts that you're sort of morphing from radio into digestible podcasts. Like you're marrying and what's going on in Toronto and has been going on for probably the better part of a decade now, maybe even longer, but just in different ways. You're marrying the product with the content created off of the product, and that's going on in other markets as well.
You own the thing that's creating all the content and the thing that's covering all the content, right?
Right, and I just my hesitation is that the fewer, and when I say independent voices, I'm not talking as if these people are like truly independent. They have employers too. Mm-hmm. But as we watch the beats die, the Toronto Star doesn't travel very often anymore.
That's right.
The Toronto Sun, I don't think, travels very much anymore.
You've got the Athletic, which is still in some markets traveling more than in others. But
not traveling. Yeah, they'll travel the Leafs because they know that hockey drives eyeballs in Toronto, and they'll. I'm a big consumer of San Francisco 49ers content. And I know that they'll travel their football people from the Bay Area because the Niners get eyeballs. Yep. So they'll travel that. But Caitlin McGrath left the Athletic, right? Did they?
Yes, that's right.
Did they replace her?
They did.
I honestly. Yes. I don't know because I actually gave up my subscription because my two favorite 49ers writers left the Athletic to go to something called the San Francisco Standard. So here I am in Halifax, Nova Scotia, subscribing to an online newspaper style entity out of San Francisco so I can read my two 49ers guys. I don't know what's going on at the Athletic, but I just don't think they, I don't think they travel because I don't think they're the clicks.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
So who's holding people accountable?
Well, this is it.
Who's asking? I may want to work for Rogers one day.
Just for people who are a little less media savvy, right? The reason you've brought up the Star and the Sun and whatever is because they are not under that Bell or Rogers umbrella, right? Who is willing to say, I didn't like this call by John Schneider or this move by Ross Adkins. If you're under that Rogers banner, you might be less likely to say something negative than someone working in a...
Well, yes, and then to extend that to the next thought, I'm looking around going, geez, how much longer is this place going to exist?
Yeah.
I may need a job at Rogers one day.
Yeah.
I better, and I'm not saying that that's at the conscious level, top of mind
Sure.
all the time, but it lives within you. You're aware of that.
Well, this was exactly where I wanted to take you to wrap up, Scotty, because you have worked for both of these companies, right? You traveled for the Jays on TSN. You did afternoon radio for TSN 1050, and you did mornings on the Fan 590. And I'm curious, how aware day to day are you that you are talking about, whether it was ever explicitly said to you, do not criticize such and such management type or such and such player? Or is it more of an unconscious but sort of subconscious, hey, they own this and they own the place where I'm working? Or does that not enter into it at all for somebody like you doing your job, where you're able to set that aside and go, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to do my job? Like, how big of a factor is it that these people who own the teams also own the network and the people covering this? And, what does that do to you in that work environment?
Well, so I was never told I couldn't say anything. So I want to be clear about that. What I do remember is, and it is so funny for me to look back on now because I see it so clearly, so much further down the road. I really started to dislike hockey during the Brian Burke Maple Leafs era, and then into that 2012-2013 lockout.
Okay, yeah.
Because keep in mind, the 2012-2013 lockout was only 7 or 8 years after the 04-05 season got completely wiped.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there.
We're doing this again, are we? All right.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, I'm not a billionaire, so I'm obviously not as smart as those who are.
That's an equivalency.
I will not be responsible.
That's real, yeah.
I will not be responsible for you getting to Mars, Matt. Although if I ever do buy a social media platform under the guise of free speech and then silence everybody who doesn't parrot my shit, I will grant you a blue check mark.
Sweet.
But
I can keep my $8 a month.
Yeah, I just need you to continue to siphon ketamine to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And also you owe me a chainsaw.
It's a ketamine IPA.
Yeah. Goes down like a chainsaw.
This is it.
You'll have a bit of a scratchy throat when it's done. Shit, if we keep digressing, I'm going to forget. That's also where I wanted to... and now I'm embarrassing myself because I've actually digressed so far and got so caught up in my brilliant sense of humor that I lost track of thought. What were we talking about?
Just, how aware you are day to day covering these.
Yes, the 2012-2013 lockout.
Yes.
So it gets resolved in like January of 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I go on the air the next day because I'm doing like some fill-in radio hosting and stuff. And I'm just going to talk about what I feel, right? Because that's what I do.
Yep.
And I went on the air and I'm like, is anybody else still kind of pissed off about this?
Right.
And I took calls on the stupidity of the lockout and all I remember is a boss calling me into the office later that day and just saying, hey, all good, but we're talking hockey season now.
Right. Everything's Shangri-La. We're all happy it's back.
Well, yeah. And I mean, obviously I understand the logic, right?
Sure.
But, and that was right around the time that the, Bell and Rogers had bought the MLSE from the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and George Cope had gone in and been like, yeah, this Brian Burke Act is a little stale.
Yes.
And by that, by stale, we mean there's a lot of mold on the bread and we're all being forced to still eat it. So let's stop that. So there's some, it can be things like that. But I just think it came down to common sense.
Right.
And you and I have had somebody might listen to this conversation and go, well, that MacArthur guy's a fucking nut job. Oh, okay. Like, whatever. Happier now than I've ever been.
There you go.
Happy to talk kind of loosely like this.
Yeah.
If you find it entertaining, great. If you think it's stupid, not. If you think it's stupid and entertaining, great. Maybe you'll come back for more next time you have me on that. But my point is, like, you're always aware. And I never talked on the radio like I'm talking right now to you, even though I wanted to a lot.
Right.
And it wasn't because I was told not to. It's because you understand. It's like being at a bowling alley and it's like, I can't put this thing in the gutter. So am I either going to throw the ball straight, or are there sort of these metaphorical bumpers that are stuck into the gutters so that if I kind of toss one into the gutter, it bounces right back into the middle of the lane and we knock some pins down.
Right. Kind of keeps me on track a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of go with the common sense. And again, it comes back to the understanding that you need to have some relationships. And one of the things that I lament, as I guess an older school broadcaster now, and somebody who isn't broadcasting anymore, is that I would have conversations with people in management later in my career, and I would say to them, you've clearly got some young talent here, and they need to be in that they need to go down once or twice a week and just kind of be in that Blue Jays clubhouse, maybe shake a player's hand, ask them some questions, get into a scrum, get a sense of the vibe, get an understanding of sort of the, I don't want to say quid pro quo, but the nature of the relationship, or do it with the Leafs or do it with the Raptors, like whatever. Because I would sometimes listen and I'm like, first of all, the depth of what's being discussed here is no deeper than Stewart at the end of the bar, 6 deep, slurring his sentences, number one. And number two, if you were forced to have cultivated relationships and understand the nature of the dynamic in these locker rooms, clubhouses, whatever you want to call them, you wouldn't feel so free to just like take a personal crap on a guy.
This is it, right? This is not something that gets talked about enough, that it's not necessarily in some of these cases who owns the outlet. It's that, you can flame that guy in your column, but good luck getting him to ever talk to you again, right? Or on the radio or whatever.
Well, but you can flame it, but like sometimes
you can be honest, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
But this was like it's almost veering into the personal now,
right?
And somebody might say, well, Scott, I listened to Tall Can Audio and I baked a cake for its 10th birthday and celebrated.
Send that over.
I've heard you on here before and you've called Ross Atkins an idiot.
Right.
And I would respond to that by saying, well, yeah, because he is. And I also have no need to ever speak to him again, because if I had a question for him, I wouldn't be sure the answer was honest anyway.
I would just ask Chat GPT. I'd get just as much of a human answer. And
so I mean, do I wish Ross Atkins ill? No, I wish him well.
Sure.
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about him. But I also, I've just seen it up close. It's bleh. If I, may fake a puke.
Yeah.
So, but generally speaking, I mean, the maintenance of relationships, the dynamic, the flow, and I'm not saying there isn't room for disruptors.
Well, and there's a balance to be struck, though, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
On how do you be honest? How do you cover the team fairly and be honest with your listener or your reader, but also understand that if I ever want to get any insight again and walk into that clubhouse, I need to have not roasted this guy personally. I can point out he's batting 0 for the last month or whatever else, and why Bowden Francis shouldn't make another start here in the next little while. They need to go out and find something. But I can't go out and take personal shots at these people and be as wound up as maybe the listenership or the reader wants me to be. Well, he doesn't have to walk into that clubhouse tomorrow, right? Like he's...
Well, maybe I know that his marriage ended and I can't talk about it.
Sure.
Maybe I know he broke up with his girlfriend and I can't talk about it, because it's personal.
Yeah.
Or maybe I know that one of his parents is sick, or maybe I also don't know.
Right.
Because a lot of that ends up being kept in-house and very protected. Teams go through a lot. Players go through a lot. Any sport over the course of a season, and so some of it you hear scuttlebutt about. You either confirm it or you don't, but you're never going to air with it or writing about it because it's deeply personal. But you understand as you give an interview on a radio station or a podcast, or you do a little TV hit or whatever the case may be, you have that context in the back of your mind. Well, this is why this guy might be tripping over his shoelaces a little bit here. He's going through it right now.
Right.
But you can't talk about it.
Sure.
So there's just like endless potential dynamics here. And, we
there are talented people at Bell and Rogers, but I wonder sometimes what the pressure is like when you work for the same place that owns the thing you cover. And even if it's not explicit, though, I do wonder day to day what that does to you.
I do think the people I'm thinking of, I think are very credible people who work very hard and would do just as well independently as they do, Shai Davidi,
sure,
Ben Nicholson-Smith are highly intelligent, highly plugged in, really good guys, if that matters to people as well. Mm-hmm. Beyond their credentials, like honest, good people. And they would, if they went independent, now it's hard to do, obviously, because you're starting from scratch and you've got to build revenue streams and stuff. But theoretically, if money was not an issue and they just went independent and they took some time to get going and they built an audience and started turning profit and everything was merry, they'd do just as good a work then as they do now. And I do think that they're able to operate. And I don't think they're fed nearly as much as somebody might think just because they work for the organization or they work for Sportsnet, which also happens to be owned by Rogers as the Blue Jays are owned by Rogers. I just don't. And in fact, there may be times where that actually complicates their job.
Yeah.
More so than it helps their job, especially when you're dealing with paranoid people like the general manager of the baseball team and maybe even the president of the baseball team at times. So, that's just, it's just we see, one of the things, Matt, it doesn't necessarily only pertain to sports, can be in anything. When we see things in strict binaries, it either is or it isn't. It either does or it doesn't. I think if we look into ourselves and look into our own lives, very few things are binary. I mean,
Shades
to me,
there
is right and there is wrong, but there isn't only one way to do the right thing, and there isn't only one way to do the wrong thing.
Right.
If you follow me. So, there's a lot of shades. A lot of shades of gray, but to tie a bow on the entire thing, I don't think it's a particularly healthy thing that one massive entity owns everything, and I am one of those people who believes that corporations tend to kill everything they touch, and there is a creativity vacuum and the emphasis on the vacuum, the sucking part, it just sucks it all in. But what do large companies tend to do? They tend to buy upstart businesses that have been really creative and built something impressive, and then they buy it up, which is hugely advantageous to the founder or founders of the small business because they get paid life-changing and generational money. So good for them.
Mm-hmm.
But then what they created ends up in the big corporate soup and often gets lost in the mix and sort of just fritters away. So
let me ask you one last thing quickly here before we get you out of here, Scotty Mac. We have seen now the president of TFC be let go, and the GM will report directly to Keith Pelly at MLSE. We have seen Brendan Shanahan be let go, and now Brad Treliving will report directly to Keith Pelly at MLSE. Rodgers, a slightly different, and I mentioned previously, Rodgers didn't love the idea of bringing back Masai Ujiri, but he was back. We'll see when that contract is up what happens. The Jays are not part of MLSE, but they are now under the same singular owner of Rodgers. If you were a betting man when the 2026 Toronto Blue Jays season starts, is Mark Shapiro still president of the Toronto Blue Jays, keeping in mind his contract ends at the end of this season?
Okay, so we're going to reach a point here where the Blue Jays not being part of MLSE or whatever it's called in the future, like if they change the name to Rogers Sports Portfolio or something, you quickly finding out why nobody comes to me for branding. But it will come to the point where it'll be redundant to call MLSE the purveyor of 4 teams and the Toronto Blue Jays a singular entity.
At some point, they get rolled in together.
I mean, I do. So if I'm a betting man, does Mark Shapiro finally land the upward mobility job that he's looking for? I mean, the commissionership of Major League Baseball is not available at this time. The team, from an on-field perspective, has been playing extremely well for the last month, and particularly of late, and are in the playoffs as of right now. If they make the playoffs and nothing that entices him elsewhere comes along, I mean, why would you drag it out this long with him only to push him out the door after a successful season?
I just wonder if they're streamlining and they feel like they don't need that position. All these GMs can report directly to Pelly and we don't need a Shapiro. I wonder. That's all.
Okay, so who's the general manager? Because it's not Ross Atkins.
Probably not for long if Shapiro's out the door.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you bringing somebody in to play the role of Brad Treliving for the Blue Jays, who deals directly with Keith Pelly? I'm still hedging on that, and the other thing, Matt, you could re-up Shapiro for 4 years, and you could fire him after 2 if you. I mean, money is nothing to these guys.
Yeah.
So if you are content with the 2025 season, and right now, a long way to go, but right now there's reason to be content. If you are content enough to keep him, and you feel that the temperature with the fan base vis-a-vis the Blue Jays front office has cooled down enough that it's palatable, you can extend him. And if things go sideways again, or he moves on to different pastures, not necessarily greener, but different pastures, then maybe, because the other thing is Pelly could look at it and say, I got a lot on my plate right now, and I just don't want to worry about figuring out who the hell the next general manager of this baseball team is going to be, because if Shapiro's gone, it's not Ross Atkins. I'm assuming that. I'm not
Yeah, they seem to be joined at the hip there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's where are things at? What are the priorities? There's a lot going on here. Maybe it's just easier to give him the extension, and if things go sideways in a year or two, we can move on from him. It's a sunk cost. We can pay him out. He can go away, find another job, and we'll just sort of reconfigure the front office to make it reflect the Maple Leaf style. The other one, as you said, Masai Ujiri, that is fascinating.
Yes, it is.
To me. And the longer the Raptors don't turn this around, the easier the argument from a PR perspective is to make.
We need a change of DNA.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing with Masai is Masai's one of these very few people who sort of have this superpower, the ability to change the world in their own way. Masai's a guy who
he'll be unemployed for 3 minutes.
He could be unemployed for longer than that if he chose to be, because he had political aspirations, or he wanted to start a charity somewhere in the world. He won't
miss you like you miss him, right? He'll be on to the next thing. And
that's right. Yeah. That's right. So it is an interesting time, the moving and the shaking within all of these individual teams as they sort of come under this singular umbrella. But I do have my hesitations about one big mammoth swallowing up everything. And it's funny, Matt, we just live in the world, right? And we don't actually stop and think, it's really weird that Rogers' name is on the Vancouver Arena, and it's on the Edmonton Arena, and it's on that concert venue in Toronto, and it's
Stadium.
On the baseball stadium, and it's just everywhere. But it's okay.
Well, the ones who really aren't are Scotiabank. You got the Scotiabank Saddle Dome, you got Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. We are 5 corporations in a trench coat. It's the Loblaws is the other one. It's
just give us our sex, our drugs, and our gambling, Matt, and we won't notice the strings attached to our arms, right?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you giving me some of your perspective and your insight on this, because it does seem like a fascinating time that this is all shifting under one umbrella. That umbrella is also going to include, the networks that broadcast it and that cover it. I don't think it's a good thing. I'm not sure yet that it's going to be a terrible thing, but I'm pretty sure it's not a good thing.
Is Bell going to be in the media business within the next 5 years?
Well, it's funny, when they agreed to sell off their portion of MLSE to Rogers, it was with a guarantee that for the next, I think it's 10 years at least, they have access to the same amount of Raptors and Leaf games that they have now. So they are hedging their bet. If we want to stay in TSN, we need to have that. And if we do decide that we're done, we can either sell it back or put it on, whatever, CTV.
Or having that content makes TSN more appealing to a potential buyer.
Sure, yeah. So we'll see where it's all going to shake loose. But it is an interesting time. I thought it was an interesting time to have the conversation. And as a guy who's covered this business for a long time and worked under both roofs, I thought you were an interesting guy to get your take on it. So I appreciate you making some time, man.
Happy to. I'm just going to go back now and stare at the Bedford Basin out my window and
enjoy summer vacation,
the salt water,
right?
and you can come back to me next time, Matt, and I'll probably say to you, I have no idea what's going on with the day-to-day.
You'll be sitting in the same spot, looking at the same bay.
But if you want me to rant and rave about bullshit, I'm happy to come on. And I just want to say, if I sound jaded, I'm actually much less jaded than I
said off the top, man. There's a different energy in your voice than previous times.
I gotta tell you, and I really hope it's this way for everybody. And I understand my privilege in the sense that I did have a previous career and was fortunate to get that career to Toronto early enough that I could afford to, well, I shared it with a bank, but to buy a property, before everything got out of hand. And so, I'm able to sort of make some choices here now with some freedom that I wouldn't otherwise have. So when I say this, I acknowledge I'm speaking to a portion of your listenership that doesn't have the freedom. But if you can just find what you care about and pursue your passions and make money doing that, you'll be a lot happier. And sometimes what you're good at isn't necessarily what you're passionate about.
Right.
And you just haven't given enough time or been able to give enough time to what it is you're passionate about. You could very well find out quickly that you are also good at that. So yeah, just roll with it, man. And, sports is still a part of my life, particularly in the fall with the 49ers, and big NFL fan, but it is not taking up nearly as much energy as it used to in my life. And while I wish the Toronto teams well, they're either going to win or they're going to lose. And I am not as locked in as I used to be. And maybe one day I'll be back.
Sure.
But I haven't boycotted, and it's not like I'm putting a stake in the ground saying I'm out. It's just life ebbs and flows, different phases of life, different age brackets, different reasons, different things, different responsibilities. They all come and they go. And so it's kind of neat to just pull away and understand that I not only can function, but that I actually don't miss it. I never would have thought that would have been the case.
Well, and that makes you a unique perspective, a guy who has watched it up close and operated inside it and is now able to step back and come at it from a different kind of zoomed out perspective. We miss you when you're not around, Scotty, so we will certainly be back in touch over the course of the summer here for you to, as you call it, rant and rave a little bit more. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Always look forward to it, Matt. We'll talk again soon.
That's where we will wind down this edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back, some question marks there. As you all know, I'm waiting to hear on exactly when the renovations outside the studio will be finished. If they're finished in the next day or two, it'll be Rob on Monday. If not, well, it won't. And we'll all swing at that curveball together. You'll find out when I do. For Scotty Mac, my name is Matt Robinson. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.
The hell is that?
Number one bullshit. Oh, number one bullshit.
Why are you so pissy?